reads, the narrative is the same. I mean, we have young adults that primarily are involved in gun crime. It's primarily affecting our communities of color. It's primarily being committed by our young African-American men, unfortunately, and they're killing each other. We often see incidents where multiple guns are being used, high-capacity weapons, multiple rounds are being fired. We had, 2 weeks ago, we had over 60 rounds fired downtown. This stuff isn't just specific. It affects everybody. It doesn't matter, what color your skin is or what your socioeconomic situation is. It touches all of us, and it should alarm all of us. But I mean, we're not seeing like 1 or 2 rounds fired. We're seeing 10, 20, 30, 40. Last week we had a couple incidents where we had over 50 rounds fired. 50 rounds fired in the city. And about 1 in 6 shootings result in a fatality. The other ones result in non-fatal hits. And I'm not talking about property damage, I'm talking just about shootings involving people with injuries. And that really is our problem. We're pretty good at solving homicides. That's kind of like that really touches a nerve with everybody. We've talked about, just egregious cases like Knowledge Sims where we had no community tips. 7-year-old gets killed, that didn't shock the conscience. We didn't get any community tips. But by and large, when somebody is killed, that seems to, shock the conscience a little bit more, and we tend to get that tip or that lead that allows us to clear that case. Our problem is our non-fatal shootings. And the reason that's a problem is if somebody is going to survive that one, they're going to retaliate, and there's going to be another shooting. And it creates this shooting cycle. And that's our focus, whether it's police department, sheriff's department, is identifying what people we refer to as trigger pullers, prolific offenders, and really focusing on that group of offenders. And we feel like that's a good strategy, but it's one leg of the stool. We know we've got to educate and prevent, and that's where I think the community comes in, has to share responsibility in this. We live in a state that is very gun friendly. There's a lot of guns that are accessible. We talk every single meeting about locking your cars and not storing guns in your cars, and we still, every night, we have cars left unlocked and a gun is stolen. Every night, we have a gun, somebody discharges a gun. Every night, we'll have a police officer or deputy that'll get in some kind of struggle, flip chase with somebody with a gun. I mean, this happens every night, without fail. In the 7 square miles of our shot spotter technology, which we're in one of those areas right now, a little over halfway through this year, we've had almost 1,000 rounds fired. That's a lot. That's a whole lot. Excuse me, 1,000 alerts. We've had 4,000 rounds fired. We've had 1,000 alerts. Yeah, it's crazy. And again, that bullet doesn't discriminate. I mean, once that goes down range, it's hitting people, it's hitting houses, it's hitting vehicles, and it creates this whole retaliatory cycle. So, I appreciate Mr. Trezevant having such a passionate interest in this, and he always has, and trying to rally our neighborhoods and our citizens. It's a sad commentary when we can huddle up like we are here, and this is the turnout that we have. I think it's a sad commentary, but I appreciate you all being here, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. appreciate our partnership with the Sheriff's Department and the Solicitor's Office. We were very clear on what our role is and what we're supposed to do. But we have got to have assistance from the community. You got to trust in us and believe us. We've got to, we can't just sugarcoat stuff. We got to tell you like it is. And sometimes we've breached that trust, and we got to earn that trust back. But you've got a really good police department that very much cares about this community and looks like this community and is a part of this community. And I hope you'll work with us to come up with real solutions.
Does anybody have any questions for the chief right now?
Yeah. How are you doing with community policing? Because in our neighborhood, we very rarely see any police come through unless somebody calls them.
What neighborhood are you in?
Lincoln Park.
Yeah, I think ever since one of the things that happened during the pandemic is, everything shut down, to include our community meetings and in-person meetings. We saw after a lot of our civil unrest in 2020, we saw a lot of people leave the profession. We've struggled to reconstitute some of that staffing. So we've had to really leverage our technology in our neighborhoods. Between the city's invested multiple millions of dollars in upgrading our camera system. We benefit from that, especially in 29203. We have an incredible amount of coverage through a really advanced camera system. And of course, our shot spotter and our license plate readers. That's a force multiplier for us. We constantly are moving officers and vehicles around to make sure we have a better presence. We try to be everywhere we can be. But let me talk a little bit about what takes us away from neighborhoods sometimes. So our North Region officers, for example, because we're right on the cusp of North and Metro, and those are the two regions that's most affected. We spend 60% of our time on Elmwood. You know why? 60% of our time. Do you not think that there would be something better for us to do? So we also go to thousands of false alarm calls every day because people won't fix an alarm that keeps going off at their house, or they won't train an employee to not set off the hold-up alarm at the business when they open it up every morning. This is every single day. So we're going on those calls for service. Guess what? That's a car that's not in your neighborhood because they're going to a false alarm call. Because we have to run, as they say, you've got to run every ground ball out because that may be a real alarm. So we're trying to do some things that right now we call them alternative response models. So we're trying to take some things off the plates of our officers. We were going to over 1,000 calls for service to deal with dogs. We're a police department. So a couple of things we've done recently, and it's something that you should know about. We're no longer responding to private property fender benders. We've always done that. That's a couple thousand calls for service a year. So you back in a pole at the grocery store, it was tying up a police officer when all you needed to do was go online and get a report for the DMV. We're not going to dog calls anymore unless somebody's been attacked. If somebody's been attacked, we're going to come and help. Or if animal control calls us for some assistance, we'll come and help. And then we're working with a third-party false alarm vendor that's going to kind of automate our system. And when these false alarms occur, people are going to get noticed. Hey, your alarm's going off. This is your warning. Get it fixed. After so many of those alarms, we'll stop coming to that too. So these are some things that we're chipping away to address your issue, ma'am. So we can clear up our calls to the tune of probably about 10,000 calls for service. It'll allow us to put some more officers in neighborhoods on their downtime. We're trying to create some more of that downtime. Because you're right. In a perfect world where answering calls for service a third of the time. We're writing the reports from those calls a third of the time, and the rest of the time, in a perfect world, we're sipping iced tea on a 90-degree day on your front porch. And that's not happening right now. Yes, sir.
Chief, with ShotSpotter, what is your best response time when the ShotSpotter is involved?
Well, so it's within minutes. It's very good. So all of our officers have smartphones. We issue those to them. They also have computers in the car. So when we get an alert, it goes straight to their car and to their phone. And, it gives them directions directly to 45 meters of the alert. Between us and the sheriff's department, we're on top of gunfire. And interestingly, we talk about community involvement. Before we turned on the ShotSpotter technology, we weren't getting calls about that gunshots. And how we know that is when we first turned that on, we would get an alert and we would not get a 911 call. So that, you can read into that whatever you want. But now, every single time a police officer or a deputy shows up, and we collect very important evidence from those scenes. And Vince may or may not talk about it, but I can tell you that we collect evidence from scenes that connect to cases in multiple jurisdictions in very important cases. It's what helps us clear cases. So it's a very important technology for us.
A follow-up question, has the communication between a 911 operator and law enforcement improved? And the reason I ask is because I experienced that. I had somebody pull a gun on me, and I called 911. And they spend a lot of time asking me questions about the person describing the gun. I'm telling them, how I'm going to describe a gun that's pointing in my face. Lady, there's a man with a gun pointing at me and several other people. I need a police officer here, And by the time I went through that process, and they got an officer there, they got the officer there in time, but the guy who threw the gun, he hid the gun,
Really?
didn't arrest him, That was frustrating, as well as trauma.
Yeah, I believe it. I'm sorry you had that experience. That's something we do here more often than we would like. Our 911 operators, they're very dedicated and committed. And sometimes that communication is not where it needs to be. Some things are changing there. The communications centers ultimately going to shift over to the sheriff's department in probably another 18 months. We think that's going to be a good model for maybe improving some of that. But any time that there is ever a misstep or shortcomings with the communications, because they don't work for us or the sheriff's department, they're independent. But we want to know about it because they're very thorough in following up and making sure that if it's a mistake, they fix it. But they need to know about it and fix it too. So we always need to know about that stuff. I appreciate you asking.
I want to comment on that for you too. We work a lot with the sheriff, all the law enforcement.
Am I allowed to sit down?
No. I was kidding. A lot of times when they're taking that information that they're asking you for, it's for a dual purpose. It's to help you out, but it's also to give the officers what they're looking for when they're on the route. Many times they've already dispatched the officers to head your way, but they're collecting as much information as they can so they can give that to the officers on their way to you, because they don't have that information. They pull up and the gunman's standing right there, and they're ambushed.
And I understood that.
So
I understood that, but it was like.
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you something else too. Somebody's got a gun in your face, that's a long time. 1 minute can feel like 30 minutes, I've been shot, so I understand, hey, where's the ambulance at? In my case, I didn't get to say where the ambulance, I was in the coma for the next 3 days. But, it does take a while. They do a good job over, most of all. And as far as communicating, I think, like I said, from talking with them, most of the time they already dispatched, the officers that way. They just need to give the officers as much information as they can get before they get there. Yes, sir.
We're glad you're still with us, bro.
Yeah, me too. So, before I speak, I'm gonna have two more speakers out here. Well, one more speaker, and I'm gonna speak for Mr. Gibson. Where'd he go? Yeah, that's better than one else. I like that this time. Anyway, I'm gonna have Captain Goblin from the Sheriff Department come up. And what I'm gonna say why he is coming up is that, one, I thank each and every person for coming. It's so important that, you know, I have a solution for all this stuff that's going on in the community. A lot of people don't want to hear it, but it's so true. It works great. For those of you that don't know, I was a Los Angeles police officer, and I worked, you know, gangs, I worked homicide, I worked communities, you know, worked in the community, and I worked also with the officers and the city council people for Compton, California. Everybody knows how bad Compton was, right? Back in the 80s and 90s, and now Compton is almost like pristine for the most
Really?
part. Yes, I mean, you ever go back out there, if you just searching on the internet, it's just like a mecca out there. There's no, all the gangs have stopped shooting in Compton. Green grass out there, which is kind of rare for Los Angeles, because everything is concrete out there, it's a concrete city. But there's some solutions that they gave me that I'm gonna share with you tonight, and it's gonna be very interesting. So, I give it to Captain Goggins.
Goggins.
Yeah, that too, Goggins.
It's hard to say, but it's, I tell everybody it's Goggins with the G. Exactly. That's the easiest way to explain it. But good evening, everybody, and again, like everybody else has said, I want to thank you personally for being here, because it shows a lot that you took your time out of this evening, knowing that we have a hurricane coming, to be in the house tonight, especially the young people. I really want to applaud you for being here, because we need more of that. And, you know, I'm gonna be very brief. I honestly didn't even realize that I would be speaking this evening, but anyway, I'm gonna be brief, because honestly, if I were up here alone, I would just be saying just like Chief Holbrook said, because everything that he is seeing and dealing with in the city, we're a complete reflection of it in the county. But just like, you know, I don't normally quote celebrities, but I think George Clooney said it best when he said, "Peace like war must be waged." And that's a short statement, but that means a lot. And it's very impactful, because peace is a full-time job. And that is our job, to try to maintain the peace, but we can't do it alone. We have to have the communities behind us. And from my understanding, this is what this meeting is about tonight. I've been working gangs now for 17, 18 years here in Richland County, and I've seen it from the beginning to where we are now. And I can tell you that for the most part, back when I first started working gangs, we could have some type of handle on it because it had a structure to it. You had the older guys that were actually trying to give some guidance to the younger guys, and keep them in line and check some type of way. What we have now is you have the older guys that have nothing to do with the young guys, and the young guys are just reckless. And these are the ones, just like Chief said, we are in a gun-friendly state, and they're getting their hands on it. It's unfortunate, but you know, a lot of the guys that shouldn't have their hands on the guns are getting their hand on the guns and out here committing these violent crimes. So you have the younger guys that are reckless. You know, they're out here just you know, committing violent crimes. We just had a deputy's house, and a deputy that got shot about a week ago, along with his fiance inside of his house with his more patrol car out in the driveway. So that's how emboldened the community has become with the violent crime. So, you know, like I said, and luckily, kind of piggyback on what Chief was saying, the NAIN, picking up the shell cases, that type of evidence is so important, because that is going to be key in putting those people in jail. And I can tell you that you'll hear a lot more about that here soon, because we've made a lot of progress. And NAIN picking up shell cases was key in our efforts in solving those particular cases. But like I said, I'm not going to be long. I'm here for you. I would rather hear questions that you might have and things that you might want to hear out of this meeting. And again, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you coming. All right, thank you.
Any questions? Any questions that you have for the county?
Yes, sir.
Well, I kind of wrote my question for Sheriff Lott, but I'm glad it's you, because Captain Vince Goggins and I have a history now.
Yes.
He came to my community meeting once my neighbor had a drive-by shooting. Well, it's happened again. At 3612 Baywater, they've been attacked twice now. The first time was June 7th, and now August 21st. So this was just recently. But this time, one of the bullets came through my grandmother's bedroom window and into her ceiling fan. If she would have had that ceiling fan on, she would have been dead. She had glass all over her bed. She didn't know there was glass on her bed. She got up to use the bathroom and went back to the bed. Thankfully, everybody was okay. It's a miracle that we were spared, and I thank God that nobody was hurt. But this is the second time, and they're going to get bolder. And I feel like my nerves are at like a DEFCON 1 level, but my community seems to be like, this is just another day in Baywater. When I know it's not another day in Baywater, but there's a certain level of apathy. I think Chief talked about trust. Yeah, trust is an issue because people aren't talking. I've even tried to talk to family next door, but you don't get anything from them. But there's also a certain lack of apathy. I mean, there's a certain apathy in the community because this, like the old Westerns, when they're getting attacked, they circle the wagons. And the community doesn't circle the wagons anymore. And it's just like everybody's on their own little island. If it don't happen in my house, even though it happens right across the street from me, I got nothing to do with it. And I just feel like we're just asking for trouble because what if they get the house wrong next time? What if the person driving the car drives the car on the opposite side of the road and they shoot the house on the wrong side of the road? I mean, these kind of days, are these people smart enough to know that they got the right out? Do they care? I just find it just nerve-wracking every time I hear a car come down the street at 1 o'clock in the morning now. And I don't see that going away because when I talk to my council members, I'm going to quote them. We can't write ordinance against people's right to bear weapons. And they just throw their hands up and say, we got nothing to do here. And I just feel like that is pitiful. And I find myself wanting to replace all but 2 of my county council members because most of them people are Democrats. And as a Democrat, I'm offended that most of them feel like they ain't got no responsibility to be better leaders on this issue when we are sky high in stolen guns and irresponsible gun ownership. These are irresponsible gun owners leaving their cars and their vehicles. One of the county council members told me how he did it.
Okay,
That was his, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
What was the question? What was the question?
I apologize. So I apologize for that rant. I wrote it down so I wouldn't rant. And, but I want to ask, I have seen no extra patrols of the sheriff's department in my neighborhood. This is 2 attacks now. And I feel no ease, like my community's not doing anything. It feels like my sheriff's department's not doing anything. I know they're investigating, but I don't feel like they're protecting me any better. So I don't feel any safer. And I know my council's not doing anything. So I know there's a certain responsibility we have as a community, but I feel like sheriff's department should patrol them a little bit more often.
And I agree. I think kind of what Chief Holbrook was talking about, there is stress on manpower because, everybody is really hurting right now. And your neighborhood is one of those neighborhoods that we rarely have any issues. And that's unfortunate, and I know that doesn't bring you the peace on your concerns, but I was actually told that you would have more patrol in your community, so I will definitely check on that.
I would appreciate that
And make sure that happens for you.
because the day before the 21st, and I apologize to everybody, the day before our shooting, there was another drive-by shooting up the street from us. So that's 3 drive-by shootings in our community, and we ain't getting no extra patrols.
And I think it goes back to the point of us being here this evening. I mean, we can't do this alone. You know, we cannot do this alone. We can't handcuff our way out of this situation. I can't tell you how many times I've gone up on the scene, and it's at least 200 people out there, and I know at least 100 was there when the incident happened, and we get no communication.
Right.
No, I mean, no one wants to be involved until it's somebody that affects their family or them, you know, their loved ones. And, that's what we got to change, you know. We need your help, and I think that's the reason that we're here this evening, so, but I will definitely check into that for you.
Well,
Because
sign me up for helping too.
Yeah,
Sign me up.
Captain Goggins, you have a question?
Yeah, my problem is with law enforcement is, like, when y'all see the legislature pass certain laws, like, no carry, you don't have to have no permit.
Right.
Y'all don't say nothing. Y'all sit there, let that. I'm telling you what I see. 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 You sit there, let them pass these laws and stuff, and I'm saying, where's the police? Why ain't they saying something? Because it ain't gonna just affect us, it's gonna affect y'all too. Y'all sitting there, they passing these AK-47s, letting these people walk around with these AK-47s. I don't hear nothing from law enforcement.
Sir, I hate to cut you off, and I'm gonna let Chief
Go ahead. I'm just telling you what I see.
What I can tell you is that we're frustrated also, and I'm gonna tell you.
All of us are frustrated in law enforcement, dealing with that.
That's amazing.
There's no other leaders in this state other than Chief Holbrook and Sheriff Watt. Whenever they are trying to get something passed, those 2 guys are the ones that's in front of the media, bringing it to light, and the solicitor as well. So we got that communication, and we have that support here in this county. Now, everybody has a vote. The people that are voting on these laws are the people that we're putting in office. So those are the ones that we need to start really looking at and challenging on the decisions that they're making. So, but I'm gonna keep that short, but I can tell you, whenever something like that happens, these guys are in front of the media, and that's hands down.
Well, I know what I see.
And I understand.
And just to piggyback.
But also one last thing.
Go ahead.
But also one last thing. From my understanding, I don't think this meeting was designed to attack law enforcement. This meeting.
attacking law enforcement. I'm just telling you what I
Okay,
see.
I understand. It's not just what you're saying. This meeting is about how we as a community can combat violence out here in the streets together. So I want to make sure that we move forward with that mentality.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Yes, sir. Okay, I'm sorry.
I'll leave it at
Yeah, I know it's funny, but people don't do it every day.
Listen, we're frustrated also.
Yeah, I know.
The shower.
These kids dying every day.
It's better.
And it's funny.
My question to you is, because I work with law enforcement, not as a law enforcement officer, but I have worked with law enforcement years ago in a major city, and yeah, it's history, how history repeats itself. This is nothing new that we're talking about. And, the interesting thing about it, my question is this: how is law enforcement working with the city council to come up with some alternatives to deter the crime? That's my question.
That's probably something I'm gonna answer though.
Okay.
I'm gonna answer real good for you.
Okay.
And it's not about what law enforcement is doing with city council.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you an answer that's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna
Okay.
work real well if we can get enough people to. Yes, sir.
My question is to
And
him.
how you doing, Coach?
I'm doing fine, how you doing, sir? My question is to him, why do you say this is nothing new? I don't understand when you say it's nothing.
Okay, well, I started with the police department in their communications division in Washington DC in the 1980s and in the 90s. And that's why I say that that's that's why I always say it's interesting how history repeats itself. This is something that, this just doesn't come up out of the blue.
Absolutely.
One of the things that, when I grew up, but I was on the police force during the time of the cocaine era was really bad, and we all remember Lynn Bias and all of those things, and it was tough on the police force then, just like it was in Goggins. And the interesting thing about that was, as a child, we had alternatives as opposed to gang activity. There was PAL, everybody PAL, wherever it is. There was basketball, football, pick one. One of the things I remember now that we're talking about this, when I was really, really small in elementary school, they usually left, the elementary usually left the lights on at night, where you could go, you know, play ball and all of that stuff, but that is long since passed. And also, in terms of education, we had music programs, we had all of these programs that were alternatives in terms of alternatives to gang activity. But for whatever reason, and there are a whole bunch of them, Congress, city, state, they stopped funding those things. So there's no alternative now.
The answer that I have for you is going to be the same answer that I'm going to give everybody else, but the crime issue in Columbia and Richland County, it's going to be the same answer.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's going to blow you away with that. Are there any other questions right now? Yes, sir.
My question is for the young groups of people who are causing the violence and causing the problems here. What is like the age group, and what would you feel is one of the main causes that is leading to the violence?
Well, I do think everything is secular, to your point, but to me, the difference today, because I policed in the 80s and 90s in Charlotte, the difference today is our young adults. Social media, the speed of social media. So what happens, what you see now with our young, they're young children, they're young adults is, we see emotional decisions made at a split second. So somebody is disrespected on social media, or just harsh words in person. That conflict is resolved by somebody pulling a gun. And the guns are so available, and I just don't think our young folks are processing the responsibility that comes with carrying a gun and the consequences of discharging that gun. And I think that's the difference today from 25 and 30 years ago. The age of offenders is different. Quite frankly, the sentencing guidelines are completely different. The one thing, back in the 80s and 90s, if you committed a violent crime and you got caught, or you committed a drug crime, you went to prison for the rest of your life. And that's changed with and that's a whole other discussion when it comes to prison reform and minimum maximums and all that stuff. It's a whole other discussion. But what we do know now, with certainty, and we were talking about this before, there is a 3 to 5% of our population is committing 90% of our violent crime. 3 to 5% of our population is committing the majority of our violent crime. And statistically, 1% of the population across the whole country is committing about 65% of all crime. So what that tells us, law enforcement, is we need to be very, very focused on our prolific trigger pullers, these offenders. But that's where the community, has got to be a partner with us. What's interesting is, to listen to that, scenario about the house being shot into. I can guarantee you that the people that pulled the trigger don't live in that neighborhood. Nope. And that's what we see time and time again. We have bad actors coming into neighborhoods, historic, well-established neighborhoods, come into neighborhoods, inflict violence. They're not even from that neighborhood, but we still lack cooperation. I'm gonna circle back. I shouldn't have jumped up and said, wait a minute, that was disrespectful. I just wanna tell you something. I spent the majority of the winter, the legislature was in session. My butt was parked up there at the state capitol, and I testified in front of multiple committees about open carry, and I appreciate the confidence of my fellow chiefs. I'm the president of Law Enforcement Officers Association this year for the whole state, and I felt like our efforts is what kept us from getting open carry. And if we weren't up there speaking out as a collective voice for law enforcement, I guarantee you we would have people strapping and walking up and down our streets. It was close. It was really close. And I'll tell you something else. I've been here 9.5 years. We haven't had one piece of meaningful gun legislation passed since I've been a police chief. Not one. And that goes for all of our elected officials that represent this area, all over the city, all over our state. There hasn't been one. I'll tell you the most simplest one. All these shootings, I told you every night, our deputies and officers arrest somebody with a gun, illegal possession of a gun. They can arrest them 50 times. And the solicitor will tell you, it's a first offense. They're never gonna go to jail. We don't have one of those terms, graduating in sentencing, which is simply put, first time, okay, everybody makes a mistake. Second time, penalty's a little more stiffer, right? Common sense. Third time, it's more stiffer. That's not the way it is. You can get caught in this state shoplifting a Snickers bar on a third offense, and it's a felony. Right, solicitor? Steal a Snickers bar, third offense, third offense shoplifting is a felony, which you go to prison for 10 years. But you can carry a gun illegally and get arrested 100 times, and it doesn't matter. Now, you tell me that's not a mess. Now, I'm gonna sit down.
Question now, not comment, question.
It is a comment, if you don't mind.
We're gonna keep it short.
Okay, well, I just want to add about the legislation, because it will come back up. And they were outspoken, but there wasn't enough leadership in our community speaking out against it. But I was with Moms Man Action up there at the legislature, and they were there every day. And we need more people from the community up there at the Capitol protesting against these gun bills. So if y'all aren't there, then they're going to pass it. They're really arguing about a little technical piece right now. And once the House and the Senate figure that out, they're going to pass it. So if they don't see enough of us, then that's what we're going to get. So that's fine.
And if I could, just on the protocol, can I jump in, because I think what
Please do.
Just to kind of jump in
In
while
fact,
we're
you
here,
come up
some of
here and
what we're
down.
going to talk about, I can address, or we should address. I'm Byron Gibson, I'm a solicitor. For those of you who don't know what a solicitor, well, Fifth Circuit, so that's all of Richland County, all of Kershaw County. Solicitor is the DA, district attorney. In South Carolina, we call it solicitor. That's the only difference. Same job. We got about 38 lawyers or assistant solicitors between the two counties, about 120 or so staff between the two. But just to kind of jump right in, I think when it comes to it, I step up here, there just comes a point in time when you got to draw a line in the sand and determine what you will no longer tolerate. And I mean, it seems like that's what we're talking about right now, what you will no longer tolerate. I joke and I talk about communities, and I'm kind of old school in a way, so I may say things now that I'm on camera, I may say it a little differently, but I think one of the problems that when I say our communities, when communities of color, you start looking out there and you see the things that keep happening over and over and over again. You know, you see the adage, WWJD, what would Jesus do? I think you need to change it around, WWSD, what would Shandon do? Would this be going on in Shandon? Question. Response, anybody? Would it be going on in Kings Grant?
No.
Would it be going on in Old Woodlands?
You better know the answer to that.
Well, why wouldn't it be going on?
Yeah.
Because they're gonna speak up.
We're gonna speak up. We don't like to deal with that issue.
So that stands because they won't allow it. They draw a line in the sand quickly, and And there's certain things that don't happen because they don't allow them to happen. And I know that's a big thing to say, it's hard to say. Well, it's not hard to say, it's easy to say, but it's painful to say, but it's true.
Well, it's not just only that. Those are wealthy communities.
Okay.
And you ain't gonna tell me that wealthy communities are not,
Catered to.
yeah, you ain't gonna tell, you know,
And I'm not saying that you're not correct about that, but what I'm suggesting is that, there are communities, the chief just mentioned a moment ago, when they were battling all winter long, the people showed up, people showed out, voters showed up, voters showed out, voters talked to their representatives, they and made it clear that this is what we want and this is why we want it. And so is it harder to get gun legislation and things like that done in South Carolina because it's mostly a red state and the Second Amendment is looked at a little bit differently in some areas of the South than it is in other places? Yes, but you can still show up and show out and talk about the things that are important, talk about why it affects. I mean, you talk about mom command action. Every time there's a piece of gun legislation, and what that is, that's a group of mothers who have lost sons or daughters to gun violence. And so every time there's a situation with guns, morning, noon, night, weekend, holiday, whatever, there's a contingency of them that are going to be there speaking out and telling their story. And we don't do a good job of telling our stories about what's happening, when it's happening, who it's affecting, why it's affecting them. What I'm suggesting is, and I'm not throwing stones because I learned that if I point the finger, there's three that come back at me saying that I need to be doing differently. So I tell people that's why I point like that. No, I'm joking. But truth be told, it can't happen without this kind of interaction. I mean, we talk about moving forward, what we need to do is relationships. If nothing else today, when you leave here, we have now started a relationship, a conversation. So you need to relate with us, converse with us. We need to have these conversations. Two, we gotta educate ourselves on what's going on. And so we see these things that are happening, we have questions about the law and why it's happening. Let's talk about the law, what it is, what it means, and why it works that way. And if you don't like it, then you've got to speak to the people who make the laws, the legislators, because on this end, on our end as a prosecutor, we can only enforce the laws that are on the books. What Chief talked about is one of the more frustrating things you'll see. We call it unlawful carrying of a pistol. And so again, when he said, you go across the street right now to one of the stores, you go over to Kimball's, you take something out of Kimball's, shoplifting first offense if it's under $1,000. You go across the street and maybe you go around the corner and steal a Snickers, that will become a second offense, third offense, fourth offense. Or if you're driving without a license, first time, DUS 1, DUS 2 if you do it a second time, driving under suspension third if you do it a third time. If you have a domestic violence situation, each time that happens, it's a first, second, or third. It's a graduated offense. It's the same with DUI. If you're driving under the influence, if you get stopped the first time, convicted first time, second time, third time, each time. That doesn't exist with guns, and that's a problem. You can get 0 to 1 year, essentially, and that rarely happens with guns. And so, at a minimum, we gotta speak out on that part of it. Like Chief said, first time it can happen anytime. You know, you have a gun and had it up, it wasn't in the console of the car, you had it under the seat. You had it someplace in the car it shouldn't have been. All right, it can happen, learn the lesson. But after the second time, third time, you know, somebody I used to work with said there's no education in the second kick of the mule. And so if you don't, basically mean you don't make the same mistake twice. And we're at the church, we surely shouldn't do it a third or fourth time. But each time that's where the accountability starts. You gotta teach the lesson. And that's not a lesson that's being taught if the legislation won't allow you to penalize more than that. And then for a lot of reasons, judges, and I'm not putting it on judges, but the thought process is not to put a person in jail over a situation where they're carrying a gun and they shouldn't have, and so they get a fine, and they get another fine. But you look and you see multiple numbers, unfortunately, of people carrying guns that shouldn't have guns, or they had them in their possession when they shouldn't have. That becomes an issue. Another piece that we see, and Chief alluded to it as well, is there's a trust issue that we all acknowledge and we all wear every day. You know, that happens with law enforcement, that happens with prosecutors. There's a long history for a lot of reasons. But I've been in this position about 4 years, going on 5 years now. And you cannot find a more dedicated bunch of law enforcement that you're gonna find than you will find in this room. I was a defense attorney for over 20 years, practicing around the state courts, federal courts. Here they do everything they can to get it right. Do we always get it right? Absolutely not. We don't, but we try. And these guys show up every time they can, and they do the best that they can. But one of the things that has to happen is, number one,
There has to be a reporting when crimes happen, situations happen. And then the follow-through from there through the investigation means at some point in time, people have to testify. And I can't tell you the number of cases that we have to reduce, drop, or we can't go forward with them because the people who things happen to won't testify. That literally happened in the courthouse yesterday. There was a man who had been shot. The first time it was a hung jury, meaning the jury could not come to a decision. The case comes up yesterday, the victim basically said, I'll just plead the fifth, which he couldn't do because he wasn't doing anything wrong. Well, in so many words, he said, well, I'm not testifying, I'm not doing it, and you can't make it. And if y'all subpoena me, which we did, if I come back tomorrow, I'm just gonna sit on the stand, which means he's going to walk out of here the person who shot him, who he knows shot him, and he's gonna go free.
Is that fear?
It's a lot of things to it, but what it is there's a part where the job that has to be done to get those trigger pullers and others off the street, it requires communities to come forward and we gotta nurture, and we do the best we can with that. But there's a fear, the old snitches get stitches piece that we talked about, there's a fear, and it's turned the system upside down where we're tolerating things out of fear, whereas my belief is if we stand up and draw that line and say, you know what, if it happens here, this is what's gonna happen to you. And you turn that. Because I can sit here and read the stats of, 19 plus murder cases we've tried, and people who've gotten everything from 30, in the last couple of years. People are getting 30 years to life in prison, sometimes double life in prison. Well, I can sit here and talk about that, and that matters. But the deterrent effect isn't the same until communities start to stand up and say, we're not gonna do this. We are going to be partners, and that's a key word, partners with law enforcement, partners with solicitors offices, partners with what's going on, because, at the end of the day, we're trying to find this a way to make Richland County a place that we're all proud of all the time, that you feel happy, or you feel comfortable walking your dog in the middle of the night if you need to. You feel comfortable with the kids going to any theater around here, knowing that they're gonna be okay and there's not gonna be some situation where fights breaking out all over the place, where people can be accountable, where we can be partners with one another. Again, we don't always get it right, we work at it, but the thing is we talk, we have a partnership, and we have to have situations where we can have honest communication, but then leave here with what are the next steps. And too often, we don't take the next steps, we just
What
talk.
should people do, like, say, if a person do wanna tell y'all who's done it, they're afraid that somebody gonna come back and retaliate, that's the
That's
reason
real.
you can't get people to talk.
That's
And
real.
I mean, people are scared,
But
because they feel like if they talk, then a few days later, those people come back and retaliate, and nobody protected them.
Let me ask you this question, and I mean it respectfully, and you are 100% right, that is a thought process, but we tried it the other way. And so what happens when you don't talk, when you don't come testify?
Keeps on. I
This.
understand.
And so it means, when you come in engaging law enforcement, we sit together, we put our cases together, we talk, and say, this is a real fear that I have. You gotta say that. And this is what we believe could happen if we do X, Y, and Z. And so at least there's a conversation, so maybe there's some things internally that could be done to make the person feel more safe. And but not saying anything is not gonna be the answer, because we can't close these cases that they work so hard to put together if people don't come forward and testify. They have to be there. They have to be there. Yes, sir.
Now, I've lived in this community for 40 years, and I never knew that it was always the first offence where there was guns. So what is the special interest that is driving the fact that this part of the law hasn't been followed?
It's probably the thought process that the Second Amendment is a slippery slope. If you take away any gun right, then that's the beginning to taking away all gun rights. And that's just kind of the argument that's always used, and
That's a false argument.
it's a false argument. It's a false
Well, we got a
argument.
huge gun lobby too here.
Yes, we do. There's a lot of money that goes back and forth, and so, as you talk about it, that's something that you should know.
I mean, your Chamber of Commerce, y'all got to know your Chamber of Commerce
Yeah, you got it.
is all for the gun manufacturers, not for us.
Yeah.
Okay, we got another question back in the back.
In response to his question about, people in fear of coming forward with information, that's why we have Crime Stoppers, it's anonymous.
But ultimately, and you're right, but ultimately though, for us to prosecute a case, it can't be anonymous, because I'll be hearsay.
Well,
So
that's true,
if
but I
I
mean, you
choose-
can provide some
Yes, you can
information
provide
anonymously.
information, absolutely, but at the end of the day, in order for us to do our
To
job.
prosecute, yeah, you will have to come
1701,
forward.
You gotta come
Yeah.
forward, and so that's why those conversations have to happen, and it matters. I mean, Crime Stoppers, I mean, Chief, and Vince, you said the same, or Caps, I mean, just about the number of tips you get, but at the end of the day, that gets an arrest made, but to take those other steps that have to happen for prosecution to be successful. it
Somebody's
takes-
gotta come forward.
But you know, I mean, and that is 100% true, you have different avenues, but also the fact is, let's get to the point of making that arrest, getting that man out on the street, because if he shot somebody's house or killed somebody, he's gonna do it again. So, if you're dealing with skilled veteran investigators, they know how to gather that information from you, keep you anonymous, and use other techniques and find other evidence to solidify that case and make that case solid enough to where that person's not even gonna wanna go to the court. He's gonna try to take the highest plea that we can get in order to.
Cell phones, things like that,
Exactly.
there's
I
so
mean,
much technology that these
so
guys
much-
use.
There's so many
it's
other
ridiculous.
ways,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when we respond to a crime scene, when somebody's kid is dead and 200 people are standing around, nobody wanna talk. And then everybody's throwing stones at law enforcement because we're not doing anything. Well, we're doing, we're doing all we can do. And a lot of times, those things are solved by, trust within the community, because it's like my unit. I mean, a gang task force and a narcotics task force, those things can survive without sources, people talking to us, building trust and communication. So we have people that's gonna call us and say, hey, this is what happened, this is who's responsible, that type of thing. And we have built those relationships because they know that we're gonna keep them outside of their court. So there are ways of doing that, and making sure that that case is a very solid case, so we won't have to worry about the threats and the snitching and all that other stuff that goes along with it.
Okay, so, I'm gonna give it to him. I'm gonna, snip for time, and I promise you guys, we're gonna give 1 hour, so I got 5 more minutes. And then we're gonna, if you're here after the 5 minutes, it'll be on your own accord, we appreciate it, and you'll learn a lot. But I wanna stick with my time frame, because, it's not me, I'm going to do this again, and I'm asking you guys to bring other people, so we can continue the conversation, so that we can not only just talk about the issues, because tonight, honestly, I didn't wanna talk about the issues, everybody knows what the issue is. I wanted to talk about solutions, okay? So, before I go further, ma'am.
I just want to pick back up this young gentleman when he was talking about the young people. My question is, and sometimes it's the parents, it's the young kids, they have too much time on their hands. What happened to, like there was back in the day when they had the summer jobs for the kids? I remember working every year as a child. They don't have this for the kids anymore. The kids just got too much time to be on their hands to just run wild, or if they had a summer job, they make their own money, and then they can buy their own stuff or whatever. They don't have to go and steal and rob people and stick people up. And then like, it's this thing called Scare Straight for Kids. I see it on TV, but where is it at in Columbia, South Carolina?
I mean,
We're doing it now?
Yeah,
Because you didn't do it 17 years
It's
ago.
just, it's just called something different.
Yeah, they
It's
were
been
doing
around
it.
for a while.
Yeah. So
I
pre-COVID,
called everywhere in
Wow.
South Carolina, and it's like you got to pay, because I want to send my child before it got too bad. But any place I want, it was like, were they on drugs? No, he's not on drugs. I just need him scared straight for something to happen, and then he's locked up for the rest of his life.
and I know
Got no
pre-COVID, they were
solutions.
doing stuff at the courthouse, because I'm leaving on Fridays and they'd have the women on one weekend and the guys on the next weekend, and they were kind of that, 12 to 17 range, so they were doing something since COVID. I can't tell you how that's worked, but let me speak to the other point just about the programs. When we first moved here, when I was in high school, I graduated from Trier. When we first moved here, they had, as Cap was saying, they had basketball, there was summer track, there was summer tennis, there was swimming and all that, and some of it was done through USC, some was done through Benedict, and there was a bus system that would get people where they needed to be, and so that was big, and that died off I guess in the mid-90s, early 90s. And so I can't, and some of it's funding. We talked about the funding has died for some of those things. Some of it's been revived to an extent. I know the Urban League does about 200 jobs or so a year for youth, and they're doing that kind of thing. And different offices will have interns, but to a limited extent. Our office has interns to a limited extent. We can only do a certain amount because we got between high school students, college students, and then we have issue in law students, and then you have records, and then this technical stuff. You can't have people walking around if you have access to NCI's, police, just background stuff. There's certain things, but there are things out there. But this is the kind of thing, again, the communication piece is important because the relationships come. You put the relationships out here, and then you can start kind of hearing. I think there just needs to be a repository, a place where all the information is, so we can, communities know, all right, this place is offering jobs, this place is offering jobs, and then we can talk about it. These are summer programs over there. The Greenview Park's got this one. This week there's a computer camp at this spot. There's a zoo camp on this spot, and so there are things that are happening, but I don't know that all the information is in one place so people can easily get a hold of it. But there's stuff, but there needs to be more. There's way more room for more to happen, because obviously we see the results.
And I want to tell you guys something too, by the way. So, of course, with Project Unity, I'm an engineer now. Kind of left law enforcement alone because they play with real bullets. So it's something else to say. I own a company that has really backed Project Unity, of course. And when we talk about, again, I don't want to talk about what law enforcement can do or solicitors officers can do. I'm going back inside the community now. We've looked for 3 months for a church that would house a technology school that we've been trying to launch. Here in 29203, don't you think that's needed? I could not find one church in 29203 that said, we will host your technology school. I had to go to Lexington to get somebody to host the technology school. Let me tell you, this is not only a technology school, but I got 5 national companies that are ready to hire these people once they get certified at a salary no less than $60,000 a year. Why is it that we can't find somebody in our own community to say, we will host this? We had to go to a church in Lexington County, which makes no sense. And I'm gonna just be flat out honest with you. We had to go to a white church in Lexington County to say that we will host you. Let me tell you some of the things we offer. We offer to do all the alarm system, because that's what we're teaching. We offer to do the camera system, because that's what we're teaching. We offer to do the networking, because that's what we're teaching. And they wouldn't have to pay anybody to come in and service any of that at all. We would handle all of that. Access control, the support thing that we're teaching. We can find a church in Richland County that would house, support us. Now, we're talking about, you made the point. You get these youth out here that are making $60,000, even if they're making $50,000. Do you think they're gonna go out in the street and start messing up and lose their job? No. Now, there are gonna be some that do, because that's just the way it is. But I'm gonna leave that one alone, because that kind of got real sensitive to me, because I really wanted to do something for 29203, because I went to Oak High School. Real high school used to beat your pants off the drill, but we're not gonna talk about that. But seriously though, the message I want to give everybody, because like I said, it's 2 minutes after, and I'm gonna do this. It's gonna be really quick. It's gonna be, the chief has alluded to it, Byron's alluded to it, Captain's alluded to it. The one thing that we can do as a community is act like a community.
Yes.
When things go wrong, we need to come together and fight those things. Let me tell you something that I found out about criminals that go out here and shoot up your community. You know why they? And I guess you brought this up. They're not going to go to the white community doing it, because they know that as soon as they step foot across that line, somebody's calling the police. In these black communities, we know who lives in these communities. We know who don't belong in these communities. We know if we see a car that's driving around at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's if you're like me and can't sleep in the morning. Call the police. That's their job. They can't do their job until we do our job as a community. We have to be the ones to step up to the plate. I understand what you're talking about with the snitches get stitches and don't want to testify and stuff like that, but let me tell you, how's that worked out for you? Our communities are going down, excuse the expression, but our communities are going to hell. Right? No, I understand. Yeah, I'm just using you as an example, because you're not the only one that thinks like that. A whole lot of people think like that. Until we come together as a community and we fight together as a community, what's happening now is only gonna get worse. When you make the statement of, you know, it's simple, how it happens. When I left Los Angeles, the gangs were at the height of their, you know, where they were. When I came here to South Carolina, the first thing I did was went to the chief of police. I can't remember who the chief was back then, but then again, he went to jail anyway, so. He's the one that got caught down in Disneyland. He faked his death and went down to Disneyland. But I went to him, but that's not the funny part. I went to county council, I went to city council, and I said, look, you guys got a gang problem coming. Because one thing I learned about the gangs is that back then, you know, you had the OGs, you know, old school. You had a little bit more control. But what the gangs would do is, let's say somebody gets to be a lieutenant in the gang, and his parents say, oh no, you're not gonna be in no gang, so he'll pick him up, take his son to Little City, Columbia. What do you think he's gonna do there? He's gonna start a gang. And this is something I tried to speak out to time and time again on deaf ears until the gang problem got really real. You know, then they wanted me to be a part of a gang study, which I did. But the problem is, if the community, not only the community, I'm gonna get personal with you. If you know that your son or daughter is out there shooting, if you know your son or daughter is out there dealing drugs, if you know your son or daughter is out there breaking into houses, put his butt in jail. Because that's probably gonna be the safest place for him. Because you're gonna mess around, you're gonna break in the wrong person's house, and you're gonna end up dead, and then you're gonna be saying, why do you have to kill my son? Probably because he broke into the man's house at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know? So, this is more than just community, it's about family, you know? And we got, you know, and I tell everybody this all the time. Superman ain't coming.
Nope.
Black Panther, God rest his soul, is dead. You know, Batman, he didn't see the bat signal go up. You know, we got to fight this fight. And if we don't fight this fight, and we don't really pull people in on this fight that we're fighting, we're gonna lose, it's gonna get worse. I don't care what the police department does, I don't care what the sheriff department does, the solicitor, not that I don't care, but it doesn't matter what they do. If we don't fight this fight, it's gonna get worse. And if you're serious about community, if you're serious about making a change, this is where it starts today. I think I got everybody's name and telephone number, did I not? Please? And they got this flyer, I don't know. It's like my cologne or something, you know? But I'm gonna be calling everybody about having another meeting probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks, because right now, I'm gonna tell you guys something. I'm a very sensitive person. There's 2 things that can make me cry and really hurt my heart right off the bat. That's when a child is shot and killed, and when a police officer is shot at or being shot. Those 2 things really hit me real hard, because I was a police officer. I still consider my blood as bleeding blue, and I'm gonna protect them with everything I have. When the deputy got shot at up in Elgin, I knew then that I had to start speaking out. I had to stop just being within myself saying, that's bad, and speak out and do something. So I'm asking each one of you guys to help me to make our communities better. Let me ask you something. How many city council or county council people are in this room right now?
0.
Okay, I invited every last city councilman, every last county councilman to this event.
Wow.
Because they are your representatives. They're the ones that we need to speak out to and say, I think you actually, you know, when they passed this bill and everything. Do you know how you stop that kind of stuff? Chief did his part, sheriff did his part, we didn't do our part. Because you know what? When they start passing stuff that we don't like, we need to vote their butt out of there. Again, like Mr. Byron said, we need to know what's going on in our communities. Maybe there needs to be a central point that can share what's going on. You know, like gun laws. You know, who's trying to pass these gun laws? Who's pushing them? You know, and maybe we need to start voting against them. We need to vote. We need to know who we're voting for. We know what we're voting for. And with your help, I'm gonna try and centralize some of this information. We're gonna start getting it out to communities all over. I could go longer, but I promise to keep this down to an hour. Bailey, love it, Bailey. What's your name, man? Big, you? Fordham. Huh? Fordham. Who's Baby? You didn't show up? Okay, Bailey, never mind, don't worry about it. I was assuming. You know what they say about assuming? Never mind. Oh, yeah, please do, please do.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do before we ended anyway, but. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Trevon Fordham. I'm the director for the Office of Violence and Crime Prevention for the City of Columbia. So in response to one of the questions about what the city is doing, they created an office, kind of established it last year, staffed it this year, and so we are up and running. What I did bring with me is some of our initial literature for everybody. It's a brochure about the strategic objectives, the plan right now as far as for the office, in addition to RAT card, and just kind of give some tips as far as that community involvement, how we're going to continue to work towards building partnerships with communities, also with all of our law enforcement partners, our government agencies. When you talk about different programs for young people, that's something we're working on with our Parks and Recreation Department, in addition to other partners, to see how we can do that. Workforce development is going to be huge. Helping individuals and looking at referrals for jobs, wraparound services. When you talk about when individuals are victims, a lot of times, and as a former police officer, wearing the uniform for over 10 years, I know, sometimes you get a call of somebody being shot, you go to the call, and there's nobody there, or nobody, right? Yeah. Then you get a call probably 10 minutes later from a hospital that says, hey, we just had someone come in with gunshot wounds. Investigator goes there, this person forgot how to speak English all of a sudden, has no words. It happens. One of the things we have seen, though, in other places is that, for whatever reason, sometimes they'll talk to medical personnel instead. And then that information is passed on to law enforcement. So there are other avenues that we're looking at as well as far as health-based programs. But everything is looking at violence intervention and interruption programs here within the city of Columbia. So a lot of different things that this office is going to roll out soon. There will be a website that we're actually meeting about. It's supposed to be tomorrow, but that may get pushed back because of everything going on in operations of the city. But talking about launching the website, having a menu of resources for community groups and also other resources that folks can tap into. And again, this is in conjunction with our other city departments like the police department, like Parks and Recreation, working with solid waste as far as community cleanups and other events. I know there's one scheduled in about 2 weeks, and we're going to work to get those increased. So I have the literature here as far as contacting our office. If you'd like for our office to come out and do any type of trainings as far as violence crime prevention, do any speaking engagements, or if you're having a community event, please let us know. We're also going to schedule some community forums or open mic events to where we come out and not just talk about some of the issues, because again, we know issues, and some of the issues may be things that may be more recent, but also start getting some solutions together and moving forward together. Because it's not law enforcement in the community, it's one community. It's one city of Columbia, one Richland County. All right, so again, I just want to take the opportunity to introduce myself. Here's some literature as far as our office, introductory stuff, and this is my card to follow up with me as well.
I want to talk to you after this is over. You have any questions? I found this question.
Big question, I'm technically county, I'm not city. Are you still able to work with us, or is it just strictly within the city?
So when it comes to crime doesn't know a geographic.
Right, yeah, right.
And as a chief and Captain Goggins said, a lot of things kind of we see when folks are coming into the city from the county and vice versa, in Lexington County, Irma, we're not turning down partnerships when it comes to partnership, because again, we're experiencing these same violent crime issues.
Absolutely.
And so again, you go one street over from here and you may be in the county versus the city, but again, the criminal doesn't know and say, oh, well, they've got these programs in the city, not. So we're not gonna turn down partnerships, is what I'm saying.
So I have a question for everybody here. I want to show of hands of who's going to be with me, who's going to help fight this crime, who's ready to do that. But it really doesn't matter if you raise your hand or not. I'm going to send a note to everybody in here, because everybody in here is affected by crime, one way or the other. You know, we're affected by it. I want to share this with you real quick. And this is a gun violence assessment and action plan by the City of Columbia Police Department. Did anybody want one of these? This is also on their website too. Did one of y'all want it?
So if you're really bored one night, you can also go on the website and there's a dashboard now that'll tell you where any shooting happens in the city, what neighborhood. It tells you about the age,
of the offender, of the suspects. It really gives you just a snapshot of what's going on, where it's going on, and who's doing it.
I'd just like to say that I'm so happy to see the city and the county working better together.
Absolutely.
In partnership,
100%.
because I've been within the city over 60 years. And during the time when I grew up, it was just, city wouldn't work with the county wouldn't work with the city. But I'm so happy to see them working together.
Yep.
Because crime is everywhere. So I just like to commend each one for working
Vince
better
hugs me
together.
every time he sees me.
And the chief is being humble, but I tell him all the time, a lot of that changed when he came here.
Yes.
And that's the truth. I mean,
Yes.
you know, the relationships start to really come together when you.
And I am so happy to see it because this was bad during the time when I was growing up in the city. They did not work together.
Oh, yeah. They didn't work at all.
Yeah, but we're better together.
Actually, that's what started Project Unity,
Yeah.
was the lack of law enforcement in the black community back in 2006. Anyway, thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate you guys. And you young guys, y'all left your numbers over here? I got a job for y'all. I need y'all to help me with some stuff, okay? Where do y'all go to school at?
Full-time missions, full-time missionaries.
Okay.